Happy Friday, North Texas! I'm Scott, and today is Friday, April 3rd. We've got a great conversation to share with you today with distinguished UNT alumnus Sam Golden. But before we get to that, we've got some news to know for our UNT community. Faculty, staff, students, alumni, family, and friends are invited to UNT Night at the Dallas Mavericks tonight as they take on the Orlando Magic. Discounted tickets include an exclusive co-branded hat you can pick up at the game. Meet in section 101 immediately after the game for a shot on the court. Check the link in the show notes to get those last-minute tickets. The Department of Geography and the Environment is launching a campus exploration challenge open to students, faculty, and staff. During the month of April, participants in Where's Scrappy can pick up a passport and visit 25 offices and departments across campus to find a hidden Scrappy cutout and collect a stamp at each location. Turn in your completed passport by April 30th to be entered into a prize drawing and receive a sticker. The first 100 participants also get a free ice cream voucher. Check the link in the show notes to learn more. The UNT Alumni Association has announced the inaugural recipients of the 10 Under 10 Awards, a celebration of alumni who have graduated within the last 10 years and are already making an impact in their professions, organizations, and communities. Presented by the UNT Alumni Association in partnership with the Gold Alumni Network, these awards recognize achievement, dedication, and commitment to excellence. These remarkable alumni will be celebrated at a ceremony at DATQ Stadium's Hub Club Friday, April 17th. Check the show notes to reserve an individual ticket for $40 or a table of 8 for $300. And now for some athletics news. I'll be subbing in for Zach Babb due to a scheduling conflict for this week's Mean Green Minute. Mean Green softball opened last weekend's series against Charlotte with an emphatic 13-3 win Friday night with home runs from Elizabeth Moffitt and Eva Daniels. The 49ers flipped that scoreline to take Game 2 of the series on Saturday before winning the final game of the series 5-1 on Sunday. The Mean Green played a doubleheader against Florida Atlantic at Lovelace Stadium in Denton yesterday, winning both games in exciting fashion. UNT trailed by 3 runs after 2.5 innings before back-to-back solo home runs from Madison Conley and Elizabeth Moffitt cut FAU's lead to 1. The Mean Green tied it up in the 5th, but this one needed extra innings. Freshman Casey Slovak recorded the walk-off RBI in the 10th inning. The UNT offense really came to life in Game 2 last night with 11 runs in the first 3 innings, including a 3-run home run by Conley and a grand slam by Moffitt, her program record-tying 3rd grand slam of the season. The Mean Green ended up run-ruling the Owls with a 13-4 win in 5 innings. They'll look to keep that momentum going when they wrap up the series here in a few hours with a noon first pitch. That start was moved up to beat the rain that's expected to roll into Denton this evening. Visit meangreensports.com to get your last-minute tickets for that matchup. Thanks for that update, Me. We've got a great conversation to share with y'all today. Last week, UNT was proud to host distinguished alumnus Sam Golden to talk about his new memoir, A Golden Legacy: Faith, Family, and a Life of Purpose. Sam graduated from UNT in 1974 with a degree in business administration with concentrations in banking and finance. He was a 3-time UNT letter winner under legendary football coach Hayden Fry and went on to have a remarkable career. He served as managing director and co-CEO of Alvarez & Marsal Financial Industry Advisory Services in Houston after starting his career with the U.S. Office of the Comptroller of the Currency as an assistant national bank examiner and worked his way up to become the agency's first ombudsman and senior deputy comptroller. Golden has maintained a deep connection to UNT over the last 5 decades. He has served as chairman of the UNT Foundation Board of Directors and is a member of the Chilton Society, the 1890 Society, and a lifelong member of the UNT Alumni Association. In recognition of his outstanding achievements, he received the Distinguished Alumni Award in 2013 and was inducted into the G. Brent Ryan College of Business Hall of Fame in 2019. Where he holds a founding position in the Dean's Circle of Excellence. His daughters, Jacqueline and Jana, are also UNT graduates and carried on Sam's athletic legacy as members of the women's golf team. Sam returned to campus last week as the Gateway Center hosted a book signing for his new memoir, which included a fireside chat with UNT System Regent Kathy Bryce. A fellow Distinguished Alumni Award winner herself, Kathy talked to Sam about his motivation for writing this book, going to school during segregation and integration, and some of his favorite UNT memories.
Let's just start at the beginning, Sam.
Yep.
What prompted you to want to create this book? How did it get started?
Yeah. I am, since I have the mic, I can say what I want to say. And it may not be the politically correct thing to say, but my faith drives every aspect of my life. It's my foundation. I'm 74 years old. And for the last 10 years, our oldest child, Jacqueline, has been in an unwavering, steadfast, sometimes not very kind way after me, to what she called tell the story. She even gave me and Valerie a little book on telling the story. She said, y'all have got to do this. And I ran from it. I ran from it for a long time. And then she did something that was really unfair 4 years ago on St. Patrick's Day. My name is Samuel Patrick, born on St. Patrick's Day. She wrote me a letter, and that letter still sits on my desk, and I read it at least 3, sometimes 4 times a week. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And then I immediately said, I need to get off my lazy behind, and I need to do what this child, and she's 41 years old, so she's not child, but she's my child, is asking me to do. And so I started writing that day. But what she basically said, and included right at the beginning of the memoir, is a copy of Jacqueline's letter. And so you can read for yourself and see why I was motivated to take this journey. But she basically said to me that I stand on the shoulders of giants that materially had almost nothing, but had the greatest gift of all to give, and that is that they loved me so much that they embraced me with discipline, and then they instilled in me the ability to dream large. And some people thought I grew up on the wrong side of the railroad tracks, but don't realize that that side of the tracks was where it was all happening, because you were loved by a community beyond your family. But then Jacqueline said something that, John Richmond, you'll know is really unfair. She said to me, not only do you owe it to those giants upon whose shoulders that you stand, you owe it even more so, Sugar D, to the generations of Goldens that you'll never meet. My children's children, her children are 6 and 8 years old. I may never get the opportunity to meet their children. And she said, you owe it to them to tell this story. Jack, I started writing that day, and it was a 3-year journey that was extraordinary. And again, it wasn't written for you. It really wasn't. But up front, I knew, Ben and I have been friends for 56 years. We started North Texas together. And Ben, one thing that I learned a long time ago is that the things that you know how to do, ain't nobody in this earth that can do them better than you can do them. But the things that you don't know how to do, Kelvin, you need to get somebody that does know how to do it well to help you. And so I didn't know any publishers. I didn't know any editors. I didn't know any proofreaders. I didn't know any of this process. And this lovely wife of mine, my dearest and nearest best friend, said, if you're going to do this, I don't want our great-great-grandchildren, when we're dead and gone, to be embarrassed about this effort. You're going to do. She didn't say it quite like that, but y'all know what, you know how you wives talk to us. She basically said, you need to get this done right. And so many of you know Angela Ransom Jones. And Angie works for Citicorp, but Angie really is a writer, and she's extraordinary. So I asked Angie to get on this journey with me. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. Let me stop. I've answered your first question.
Well, you can say, as you said, you're in charge. You can say anything you want to today. I'm just along to follow you. You know, Sam, when I think about when obviously we and a lot of people in this room grew up,
Yeah.
It was a time that was filled with change in America.
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about growing up in Wharton, Texas, during the time that you grew up.
Absolutely, Kathy. I always say Wharton is the center of the universe. It's a little town that when I was there, it was 8,000, and it's 7,999 now. It has not grown. It has not grown, but it is a special place. But it's a town like many in this country. I was born in 1952. And so I went to school in the 50s and in the 60s. Well, the schools were segregated. Blacks went to one school, everybody else went to the other school. And until I was 14 years old, as strange as this may sound, I didn't know a single white person. I did not. But my parents and my grandparents said to me that all people bleed red, and you can do anything that you're willing to work hard for. And I had to sit in the balcony of the theaters. I had to go into the kitchen of the restaurants. The restrooms had colored, which is an offensive term, colored and white only. I mean, I grew up on that. And to get to Houston, because our cars were ragged, we had to ride the Continental Trailway bus. Tim, I had to get at the back of the bus, and I'll never forget this. I one time got on the darn bus, Joe, and I sat right behind the bus driver because there were stick shifts on the buses back then. And my mama said, "You can't sit there." And I said, "Why? I want to sit behind the bus driver." And this man said, "Leave him alone. Let him sit there." I'll never forget. It's like it was yesterday. But I grew up in a community that when I turned 14 years old, my mama, who was a third grade teacher, Kathy, in 1966 was an optional year of integration. And they asked my mom if she would go from the Canton Road Elementary School, which was the all-black school, to the Alabama Road Elementary School, which was the white school, is what I called it. And my mama said, "I teach cats, frogs, green, black, and green. I teach kids. If they're third graders, I'll teach them. Sign me up," and I'm going. She said, "You're going with me?" I said, "Oh, no, I'm staying with my boys at the training school." There's no way. Well, my dad gets home, and my dad comes in, and he said, your mom was talking to me, and she says that you're not going to join her across town for school next year. And I said, "Oh, no, Dad, I'm going with my boys. I'm going back to the training school." And my father said to me, the last time that I checked, Bernie, he said, the last time I checked, there are two male figures that live in this house. Now, but one of them's a man. You want to figure out who that is? I said, "Yes, sir. Where do I sign up?" But it was the best decision I ever made. I walked onto that campus, scared to death, and a young man named Robert Taylor, who has a chapter in the book, walked up to me and said, "My mama and your mama are friends." And I said, "Well, who the heck are you?" He said, "I'm Robert Taylor, and my mama told me that on this day to find you because we're going to be friends." Well, Robert and I are the best of friends. From that day, when we were both 14 years old, Robert and Valerie collaborated to make us spend too much money on a house. He's an architect. He's an architect, a renowned architect. But that friendship started that day, and it opened up my eyes to that people are people. No matter what color they are, no matter what gender they are, no matter from what country they're from, we're all God's children. And literally, but the period of the 50s and the 60s were tough. And I'll talk a little bit more about later. My heart is still heavy with where we are today, but I'll talk about that later. But things were tough, but they were made easier because there was one special man that was on that campus, and that was my high school coach, Eddie Joseph. Eddie Joseph became chairman of the Texas High School Coaches Association when he left Wharton. But this was a man that was equal in his outlay of discipline. He didn't care what color you were. And they literally ran him out of Wharton. They ran him out. And you know why they ran him out? Is because he had black kids on the team that I know I'm talking too long, that they ultimately he thought were the better players that he played, and it was unpopular in the town. But he then left Wharton, and not only was he the head coach and athletic director in Wharton, he became head of all of the coaches on a statewide basis. But he is my hero and will always be my hero. He's deceased now, but what a man.
Do you mind sharing that little story about advanced classes and your mama?
No, not at all. My mother, my mother was a champion. My mom, when I was forced to go, and glad that I went, we started school, and there were a small handful of us that were black who went to Wharton High School. And a number of us were in advanced, like I think they call them GT classes. Now, we were in advanced classes at the black school, and then when they blended us all together at the Wharton High School, which was predominantly white, guess what happened? None of us were within the gifted and talented classes. And so my mama figured out what was going on, and she was a brave, much braver than I am. She went to the superintendent, who said, her name was Lucille. She said, you go over to the high school and talk to Richard Bain, who was the principal. Well, Mr. Bain was not there. Tom Gladden, who was the assistant principal, got the wrath of my mama, who said, the heck with you that you're going to take it was about 6 or 7 of us, these kids, and you're going to place them in classes where they're not going to be challenged. That's sinful, and you better do something about it. Well, the next day, we're changing classes, and I'm thinking, what's going on? I was in this class, and why am I all of a sudden going in with different teachers? But I now go back and think that if it had not been for the courage of my mama, I would have just drifted through high school, probably not being challenged as I should. And one last story on that. We finished in May of 1970. The 2 banks in town had a tradition of all of the honor graduates. They had a big celebration at the Wharton Country Club, which I had never been in. They canceled that celebration that year because 6 of the 12 honor graduates were black. My mama had $283 in the bank probably. She went to the bank, one of the banks, Security State Bank, that was sponsoring this event, and withdrew her money out of protest and said, the heck with you guys, and went to the superintendent and said, you can't permit these guys to do this. And he said, I don't run the banks. Show you another irony. I became a bank examiner, Tim. Okay? I became a bank examiner, but a federal bank examiner. The little national bank in El Campo purchased the bank in Wharton. One of the toughest things I've ever had to do. When the little bank got in trouble, I had to remove that charter and close that bank. But it also gave me a chance to look into the insides. And so all of the muckety-mucks that were in my town that I thought were the well-to-do, extremely wealthy, were surviving on borrowed time. And they weren't the wealthy people. They were there because the banks were pushing cattle loans from one year to the next and taking farm. I mean, they were not the quote wealthy muckety-mucks that I thought that they were. But it was a very difficult thing to do, is to come in literally in charge of the controller of the currencies office in Houston and have to remove that charter. And I'm thinking, and these were the guys that one day would not let us in the spring of 1970 have a celebration at the country club.
Well, I never met Mrs. Golden, as you can tell.
She was a giant.
But she's my kind of gal. And,
yeah, she was a giant.
I wanted that story about being an advocate for you and your friends.
She was.
Classes. You talk a lot in your book about your parents,
yeah,
your grandparents,
mm-hmm.
really giants in your life.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about their influence and what you carry forward from having been raised in that family, those people.
You know, it really has grounded my understanding and appreciation that, and Valerie and I have been blessed enormously, more than I would have ever envisioned. My parents were living, Lynette, they were thinking, huh? But they wouldn't, but they would be very proud, not of any material accumulation of wealth, but a steadfast focus on what the foundation is. Because they loved me so much, they were willing to discipline me. They were willing to let me know what side the bread was buttered on. And I'll forever be grateful for their sacrifice. My dad loved me so much that in the spring of 1972, after my freshman year, I was a good student. I'd made A's and A's and A's and A's my freshman year because I was scared to bring home anything else other than that. Freshmen couldn't play on the varsity team back in the early 70s. And so I was on the freshman team. The guy in front of me, Bernie, went down after the third game, and I started all games at guard. Yeah, 5'10" Sam Golden played guard, offensive guard. After that, but I started smelling myself that semester. I found Schlitz malt liquor, the Bull, and Valerie, I started liking those girls that because you hadn't come into the scene at that point. And I brought home 4 C's and a B, 2.2. My mother, who was a school teacher, Lynette, screamed. It was the most miserable Christmas holiday season imaginable. Charlie, my dad said nothing. I got back to school. I lived in Kerr Hall. There were no cell phones. There was a note, Harrison, at the front desk from Rod Rusk, who said, stop by the coach's office before you go down to Faust Field for your off-season workout. So I stopped by, and I walk in front of that coach's office, and I see my dad's beige 1959 Chevrolet Biscayne. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what is he doing here? So I go in, and Coach Russ said, sit down, Sam. So I sat down, and my dad's sitting on the other end of the couch. And Coach Russ said, we got a little bit of a problem. Mr. Golden tells me you've lost focus. You think you are an athlete student rather than a student athlete. And my dad looks at me, and he said, at 5'10", 220 pounds, the NFL doesn't need or want you. You're here to get an education, and nobody's going to hire you with a 2.2. And I said, but Dad, he said, did you hear me, son? I said, yes, sir. And Coach Russ looks at me and said, as of this day, Sergio, you no longer play football for North Texas State University. And my mouth dropped. And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, go clean out your locker. I moved from the 2nd floor up to the 9th floor. And he said, we're going to keep your scholarship this semester. But after that, your history. And I'm thinking, by this time, I don't mind telling you, the tears are rolling. I said, Dad, you can't do this. And he said, I'm your daddy. I wished I had the courage to have been able to do so. I know I couldn't do that for any of our 3 children, but it was the best gift that any person could have given me because he got my attention. Needless to say, I didn't make a 2.2 that semester, Brendan. My grades went back up, and I didn't make a 2.2 for the remainder of the time either. But he got my attention. These people walked love. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was one of the most special women you'll ever meet in your life. And I'll tell this quick story, and I'll stop. We are people of faith. I sat right next to my grandmother on the 2nd pew on the left every Sunday of my life at Macedonia Baptist Church. I got ready to give my life to Christ, join church, and so I get up, and when they open the doors of the church, I jaunt up there and said, I'm ready to join. And my grandmother comes and snatches me. She said, sit down. you don't have a clue what you're doing. You don't understand what you're doing. And the pastor says, she's the boss. So for 2 months, in fact, a few weeks ago, I was down in Warden, and I went and found that old pecan tree right off the banks of the Colorado River that she called her praying grounds. So for 2 months, she prayed with me. We studied the Bible. She made sure that when and she never said, you're ready now. But in about a couple of months, they opened the doors to that church again, and I walked up there, and I'll never forget it. I couldn't even muster a word. I cried, and I cried, and I cried, because it was the best day of my life. I gave my life to Christ, and I knew what I was doing, Kathy. That old lady made sure that I knew how important that part of my life was. She cared enough to stop me from doing it when I didn't understand it. Thank you, Kathy.
I know those of you that know Sam can't count the times that he quotes some wise saying that he has lived by from that grandmother. Or his mom or dad, but his maternal grandmother. I can't count the times Sam says, well, Kathy, my grandmother said, well, Kathy, my grandmother taught me. She was a giant in Sam's life, and you do them all proud in the book. And I can't wait for people to read about those stories and know what they are like. It's obvious that you've stood on the shoulders of a lot of very special people, just like Jacqueline said to you, to inspire you. But talk about what Jacqueline was talking about, this legacy that you're creating and what you want your children, your grandchildren, and those great-grands and others that you may never see. What do you want them to come to know and remember and share about you and your life?
There's been nothing easy about this journey. And for anyone that expects life is easy, they're in La La Land. But every day of it is worth the living. I say to, and I've had the blessing of being around all 7 of my grandchildren often. And I say to them frequently, we have a saying in our family called the 3 Ds, and it stands for desire, discipline, and determination. And the desire part of it is easy. You got to want it. You got to have the discipline to do what it takes to get there. And the determination that when you get knocked down, to get your butt up and to do something about it. Not ever expecting that coach is going to give it to you. Because Coach and I were texting the other day, and I know one of his greatest joys is to coach his son. And part of the joy in that, Kathy, that I have with my grandchildren is that, maybe he'll go to the NBA one day and maybe he won't. I pray that he does. But it's the values that get transferred from one generation to the next that make all of the difference in the world. That's worth more, Lynette, than anything materially that I leave to our children or to our grandchildren. Now, I'm not stupid. Is it important that Barry and I do things and contribute to 529s and all of those things that make it easier for the next generation? We feel that as an obligation. The Bible says it's your children's children that you have an obligation to make sure that you do some things for, and we're doing that. But it's the values that are most important. And so, in fact, I'm going to read here in a little bit the last part, my parting words to the next generations. But that's the message that I really, and that's what I want them to take away.
Well, I have no doubt that your grandchildren know what you and Valerie stand for and what matters.
I think they do.
Oh, I have no doubt.
Yeah.
We all know that UNT holds a really special place.
Yeah.
And you and Valerie and your family, your girls, and even your son, they know this place and have contributed and see what's going on.
Yep.
But tell us, I mean, you've lived in Houston. I know what it's like to see you coming back and forth for events and back and forth to serve on boards and things. What keeps you so connected to your Mean Green family?
It changed my life. North Texas has been a uniquely special place forever. I hit this campus in August of 1970. Things were turbulent. I could have easily have gone to Prairie View, to Texas Southern, to historical black college and university. I could have done that. But it felt right here. And it felt right. And I also had an opportunity, Kathy, to go to the University of Texas, to go to Texas A&M, to Rice University, and my mother is still churning in her grave. I had a full scholarship to Stanford University in Palo Alto, and it didn't feel right. But Johnny, I walked on this campus in March of 1970, and I had the privilege of having someone, and I didn't know how important this man was, but my uncle was a handyman for a gentleman named Edgar Q. Smith, who was the general counsel for Humble Oil, the predecessor of ExxonMobil. And my uncle was his handyman. And so during the summers, I did electrical work, I roofed houses, I did all the plumbing work, I did all those things with my uncle. But at noon, every Friday, Mr. Smith insisted on paying me himself while my uncle went off to get sandwiches. What I didn't realize is that he was mentoring me because he had 45 minutes alone. And he would say to me, Sam, you're going to work a lot harder than your uncle, but you're not going to sweat as much. But you're going to work really hard. You're going to be a businessman. Well, I had no clue Sergio, I just didn't have a clue what he was talking about. But he said to me, when I knew I wanted to play football, he said, on every one of those visits, because you're going to be a businessman one day, you have somebody from that business school spend some time with you that'll be willing to invest in you if you go to that school. Well, I asked Texas A&M, I asked University of Texas, I asked Stanford, and none of them, and Bryce didn't have a business school. They still don't. They have a commerce department. And so nobody honored that wish. I hit this campus, Ben, Nabil Abafadl, finance professor in the School of Business, Maryland, spent 3 hours with me. It's not the G. Brent Ryan School of Business, boy. We were in the quarters back then. But he took me over to the business school. And I said, Dr. Abafadl, if I come here, will you be my advisor? And he said, I'd be honored to. Ben, I didn't realize what I was asking for. This man loved us, Ben. He invested in us. He got me my first job. I literally, Kathy, wanted to go to work for one of the four big banks. First National Bank of Dallas, Republic National Bank of Dallas, Texas Commerce in Houston, First City National. Dr. Abafadl said, you're not going to work for those banks. You're going to work for the premier bank regulator on the planet, the controller of the currency. They paid $9,931. My first paycheck was $271.34. I'll never forget it. The banks were going to pay me, Dan, between $15,000 and $17,000. My parents together made less than $10,000 then. And I said, Dr. Abafadl, you've lost your mind. I can make It was the best decision. And I called my father. He said, when are you going to stop listening to Dr. Abafadl? This man has been your best advocate for 4 years now. You're going to work for the government. And I said, oh my God, I'm not going to work for the government. Well, it was the best decision I could have ever made. This place is special. We have 2 children, 2 of our 3 children. My son is still green. He went to Baylor, but we tried to. But we had two girls who came here, and it's not special. We have no choice. I asked Sergio to stay. Sergio, I know you have to go, but it's young people like Sergio, and the greatest women's golf team on this planet is back there. I mean, it is Mike and Marcus and those young ladies. You'll never know. You'll just never know what you do for us while just seeing you give the very, very best. Harrison, they are just a few points under 4.0 as a team. As a team. And they're extraordinary. They just tore it up in Tucson last week. I mean, just tore it up. And so this place is such a special place. It is still a place where, irrespective of how much you have, whether or not your parents went to college, whether you're first generation or not, you can make it here. It's a comforting environment. It's an environment where you got John Richmond, who's going to love you. Marilyn Wiley, who's going to love you. I just talked to Marilyn today. She's got a young lady that's who I know, emailed her this morning, wants to come see Marilyn. What is Marilyn going to do? She's the dean of the G. Brent Ryan College of. She's going to meet with her. Now, I venture to say that there are places that you could go to that having access, and Maryland's special now, okay? John is special. I mean, real special. But they realize that it's all about young people and making a life difference and make a difference in their lives. You know, one day she's going to be talking about Maryland like I talk about Nabil Abafal, because you change the lives of young people. I love this place. And how can I not give back? When God has blessed you, you have an obligation to continue to give.
Well, I won't speak for Brandon and the president over here, but I think all of us that love this place are really glad that you love it and you and Valerie have stayed connected and your girls.
Well, let me just give Valerie. Valerie went to the University of Houston, okay? No, Valerie went to the University of Houston. She has never one time, not one time in all of our marriage, and I mean, I need to tell Brandon knows our commitment to advancement. But she's not one time said, well, to send it to U of H versus sending it to she's not. And so thank you, honey, for your incredible support. And I'll say this to you. It is not about the donations that you make. While it's important, it's real important. Stewardship is time, talent, resources, and influence. It's got 4 legs, not 3. It's giving all of yourself to the benefit of this university, because at the end of the day, it's the Sergios of the world and it's those young ladies of the world that's going to make a difference. I'm 74 years old. I know this is the 4th quarter of this journey. I pray that it gives me a whole bunch of overtimes, Dan. But I know it's the 4th quarter. I know it's the 4th quarter. But I'm comforted knowing, Marilyn, that we're in good hands because of the young man that's sitting next to you and for those young ladies that are standing back there. They're extraordinary.
Well, I can tell you this, if you've never sat near Valerie during an athletic competition.
Oh my God. Spare yourself. Spare yourself.
You would never doubt her loyalty to the Mean Green. She makes Sam and I look like we're quiet when she is after it. So I know your support has meant the world. Obviously, with the release of your book and your memoir, you've now embarked on a new journey.
Yep.
And a new adventure. Your UNT family is excited to share this with you and share this milestone today. But share with us what makes this stop on this tour so special.
This place is home. I mean, it is home. And Valerie said to me, when I got the unbelievable special privilege of being a founding CEO of the financial industry practice at Alvarez and Marcel, Valerie said something to me that I'll never forget. She said, you got to focus on targeting clients all over the world, particularly in this country. She said, but don't you ever forget your backyard. Don't you ever forget home. And so if there's some little bank in Houston that can't afford to pay you, you better help them. And that's what we did. And so this is home. And at home, you feel welcomed. And you feel a sense of obligation and you all are so welcoming. And I can't thank you. Kathy, I can't thank you enough. Harrison, I can't thank you enough. Josh, this would not have happened if you hadn't allowed it to happen. But the fact that, and those of you who came, thank you. Thank you, guys. I just can't thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. And to think about this, I got Joe Green in the audience, y'all. Our friend Joe.
Love that conversation. It's great to hear how much UNT means to Sam and how he and his wife really support our mission. Check the show notes to learn more about Sam's story. Remember, you can help us grow by telling a friend about the show, sharing it on social media, or leaving us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen. You can also let us know what you think about the show directly by emailing podcast@unt.edu or calling 4341. Until next time, we hope you have a happy Friday, North Texas, and go Mean Green. Happy Friday, North Texas is a production of the University of North Texas. Today's show was produced and edited by Scott Brown with reporting by Carlos Marquez. For more information, visit unt.edu/podcast.